Hey, what's up, creeps? If I still sound like I'm being run over by a car, it's because I'm still just a little bit under the weather. But sorry this video is a little bit late. I'm gonna be doing something I have never done before. So I've seen this episode 3 times now before doing this video. This is an episode that is very different. It's very experimental. Is an episode that, as far as like storyline, what really goes into it, is something that I feel Creep fans have been waiting for a long time. So what I'm going to be doing is I have the full notes here of things that happened in the episode, my thoughts on certain things. That is overall the episode itself. So I'm going to be talking about the entire episode here. If you guys want to not be spoiled and you guys still want to know my thoughts, I will still be doing a ranking at the end of this video about how I feel the episodes rank so far, best to worst. I will still be giving a review at the end of this, but I'm gonna jump fully into what this episode offers. So let's get comfortable and talk about the Creep Tapes episode 5. So if you guys saw my reaction, my teaser reaction for this episode, then you'll know that this episode seemed to be going into some very different directions.
About our mummies in bed.
Okay, the bed part, minus the bed part. Talk about our mommies.
More axe hiding down here.
You got 2 axes. Yeah, some really interesting stuff going on here. Which I did have some thoughts further about this teaser that have just been lingering. So a big thought that I've been sitting on, is that this seemed to be taking place before the character Brant even got to the hotel, before he even came into the picture, before shit really even seemed to hit the fan, which is really interesting because up to this point in the franchise, we haven't truly seen Joseph take center stage. We've never actually seen his side of whatever story. And with this now being pre-episode finale and still waiting on that dive into Peach Fuzz and Joseph's origins, and with the show officially down to its final 50 minutes max, yeah, if they were going to give us something, they were going to do it now. And boy, do they. So let's get into this episode. So this episode opens up with what we saw in the teaser. It opens up with that teaser, which I actually really admired because it's just such a different and fun setup. Unlike anything we've ever seen in the Creep franchise, which is, again, us following Joseph's point of view for once. And what I really liked going forward from this intro is not only the anticipation for this character, Brant, to arrive into this episode, into this tape, following all that we've already seen this far. But we continue to follow Joseph's POV, as where this episode is essentially revealed to be a sort of behind-the-scenes prologue of what we would typically see with an actual Creep Tape episode. This episode is all about Joseph's side, him setting up for the next victim to arrive, and kind of like what he goes through, or what, in this scenario, something that could happen while he's waiting for this character to arrive, and what his kind of like thought process is behind his killings, which I thought was genius, because when you get an episode like this, something that we've never seen before, and we've always had those thoughts of like, well, what is his thought process? What does he do outside of these killings, or like while he's setting them up? Well, I don't know if this happens every time, but this is definitely something where I feel like at the end of it, this episode was not enough. I need to see more of this episode. I need to see more tapes like this. But yes, we see Joseph's side of things, his thought process, as well as, and pretty immediately, how much of a role our fuzzy friend Peach Fuzz actually plays when it comes to Joseph's killings. This is essentially the Peach Fuzz origin story episode, which I predicted. I was talking to a commenter in maybe my last video, and I was saying that there's still that confirmation of Peach Fuzz and Joseph's origins to be explained in this series. There's 2 episodes left, 25 minutes each. My prediction is that one of the episodes, specifically this one, would center more so on Peach Fuzz, and then the final episode will be about Joseph's backgrounds, which makes sense. It's the finale. Also, the title for it is Mom, which after this episode, I cannot wait to see what that episode gives us, because it does seem like that one is going to tie into this one. So let's continue. So immediately after the intro, we see Joseph talking alone in the hotel room to the camera, going on with one of his lessons that we often see him preaching, where this time he's talking about codependency. And my immediate thought was, oh, maybe this is going to tie into like his victims. It's going to relate to that and how he gets attached and, obsesses toward them. Nope. During this speech, he keeps getting interrupted by a body bag that we see in the corner of the frame that's rustling, which we would all expect to be a body in there. Only for him to unzip the bag and it just to be the Peach Fuzz mask. Now this is when things start getting really silly. It shows Joseph extremely mad at Peach Fuzz for showing up, interrupting his speech, asking him why he's here, telling him that he doesn't need him before chucking the mask out the door and off the balcony of the hotel. Next, this is when we get our first mention and look at Brant. Joseph holds up a picture of him to the camera where he states that the character will be his first solo project, meaning Brant will be Joseph's first kill without Peach Fuzz helping. And that gives us our first look at what Peach Fuzz's backgrounds may actually be, what they actually are. The Peach Fuzz character persona seems to help Joseph commit more to his kills, and the codependency that Joseph was debriefing is now revealed to be him referring to Peach Fuzz and how he wants to be able to kill alone without having to depend on Peach Fuzz. And then we get a knock at the door, which is pretty interesting because this is maybe the first time we've ever seen Joseph not kill someone that actually comes in his path. So someone knocks at the door, Joseph answers expecting, to see Brant, where this is a completely different guy. And why this is all really interesting is because when Joseph opens the door to the guy, he holds up the picture next to him and he goes, "You look different than your picture." And the guy goes, "Well, I mean, don't we all?" Making us think that this may be Brant catfishing Joseph. No, this is just some guy that got the wrong door that was meant to meet somebody named Harry. Now, what makes this really interesting is that the guy just ends up going, "Oh, sorry, I must have the wrong room. I'm so sorry. I apologize." He ends up walking down the hallway, and Joseph lets him go. Then Joseph closed the door, and he says to the camera what's on all of our minds. Why would I let that guy go? And Joseph knows better. He says, as a killer, he says, I could have told that guy, "Oh, I'm a friend of Harry's," and, let him in. He's in the back. And what stuck out to me even more was a thought I had, is that this guy seems to kind of like unintentionally give Joseph an idea of how to get him in. The guy says, "Well, don't we all look different in our photos?" Joseph could have, pulled the same thing. I can't blame you. I am Harry. I don't look like my photo. Come on in. And he could have killed him. But eventually we hear another knock at the door. You would typically think, okay, this is probably Brant now. But after we hear this knock on the door, before Joseph even gets up to answer it, he looks at the door, and then he does his famous Peach Fuzz whistle, followed by a rhythmic knocking, like another knock on the door that seems to mimic the whistle that Joseph has. When he opens the door, he finds that there is nobody there. He searches the balcony, he searches around the hotel, only to eventually be jump scared by Peach Fuzz as an actual being. Like what would be like a normal person like me or you or Joseph, but just wearing a Peach Fuzz mask. Well, what really confirms that this is all Joseph's imagination, Peach Fuzz, everything that we're seeing is just from the perspective of Joseph's mind, is that before he threw the Peach Fuzz mask off the balcony, it shows him holding it up, showing us that, okay, there is nobody attached to this mask. It's literally just Joseph in the mask. And he's asking him things like, "Why are you here?" And you can see him like moving the mask, making it answer back to him, showing us that, yeah, Peach Fuzz is part of Joseph's mind. It is something that he created. It does sound a bit confusing. It's a bit janky because a lot of the episode makes us think, is Peach Fuzz an actual person or is he in Joseph's mind? We're still seeing this through a camera. We're seeing this as a recording, as what would be a tape. So I'm like, well, wait a minute. We're seeing how Joseph sees things in his mind, but we're also seeing it from the point of view from a camera screen. So we're seeing from the lens of a camera what Joseph sees from inside his mind. That's what was confusing me. I'm like, well, this could be from inside Joseph's head, but how could that be if we're actually seeing a full embodiment of Peach Fuzz from the lens of a camera, right? Well, this is my theory on this episode on why that is. And this ties into Joseph targeting specifically videographers. I'm guessing that there is something about being recorded that ties into Joseph's personal backgrounds that we have yet to see. My theory is that we're also seeing the footage, how Joseph sees the footage, looking back at it. And I'm going to come back to that at the very end because there's something that happens at the end of the episode where I really need to expand on this theory. And then the power goes out of nowhere, with Peach Fuzz hiding in the hotel room. And this is when it gets really interesting. This is coming down to the final couple minutes now. In the final couple minutes of the episode, we actually hear Peach Fuzz talk for the first time. It is revealed that he is hiding in a cabinet, where Joseph says, "I'm tired. I don't want to do this right now." And Peach Fuzz responds, "I'm tired too. I want to go home. I miss mommy." And this is where it also gets really interesting that, I said that later on in the episode, I would come back to the whole found footage format, seeing, how the only way this would make sense is if we're watching it through Joseph's eyes. There's a line during this, while Peach Fuzz is talking, where he says that they used to hold hands together while they were breastfed. And what's really interesting is Joseph he looks at the camera and he goes, "Wait a minute. Do you mean that we're obviously acting like this reveal that was to us is also to him?" Which he's the one that created Peach Fuzz in the first place, which would also further make sense about us seeing this recording through Joseph's eyes. As things got worse with this episode that we're watching, he eventually tapped into a character, an on-screen persona for imaginary viewers, it seems. Now, this is where Brant finally shows up. It ends on a really fun note. We hear Joseph's normal voice, just as we hear Joseph as a human being, telling Brant to open up the door. Only when he opens up the door, he's met with Peach Fuzz holding an axe, wearing a shower towel. Again, finally confirming and further confirming that, okay, yeah, Joseph was Peach Fuzz. Joseph was the one that was in the tub. He was getting wet with all the water. He's wearing the Peach Fuzz mask. The showers are... Yes, he's Peach Fuzz. He was both characters that we're watching throughout the episode before flinging an axe at Brant. We still have a lot of questions. How was Peach Fuzz created? When was he created? There's also the confirmation, besides the Peach Fuzz one, that we're going to be getting Joseph's backgrounds. That should obviously take place in the final episode, which I hope will fully wrap up Peach Fuzz's origin story. We'll see maybe Joseph's childhood. But yes, guys, that is going to conclude it for my deep dive of episode 5 of the Creep Tapes. We got a lot that personally I've been waiting for as a fan. We got, the Peach Fuzz origin story. We got Joseph's, side of things. Also, just the genius setup of this being revealed to be a prologue to what would be an episode of the Creep Tapes. I just really dug this one, and I cannot wait for how they're going to tackle the final episode. I have noticed that the time lengths, the run times of the episodes do vary, so I don't know how long the final episode will be, but for this one, being the shortest episode so far, clocking in at 22 minutes, they not only tackled a lot, and for all of those, that variety, just being stuff that fans have always wanted, but they did it in the most genius and most slick way possible as far as reveals and twists and turns. I really dug this episode. But yes, guys, that is going to do it for my thoughts on the Creep Tapes episode 5. I cannot wait for next week's episode, guys. With all that being said, thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for the patience on this episode coming out. And I will see you guys in the next one very soon. Take care.